Hey everyone. Oh. I think we should use that. Welcome to everyone joining us this weekend. If you are new to us here at Dulles, we're so happy you've taken the time. Maybe it feels like a risk to join, a church, a new church, and watching along with us. We're super happy you've done this. Just sit back, make yourselves at home as you consider some of what we've learned about faith and what's changing us and has us so excited about life. Hey, we've got one announcement for this week, and that is a reminder about the coat drive. We've partnered with the Dulles South Neighborhood Closet to collect lightly worn jackets and coats for many families in our area of the high schools where students can anonymously sign up for coats and jackets. Well over 200 have done so right here in the Aldi, Dulles South area. So we're participating in that. You need the Dulles mobile app. So go on your phone, download the Dulles Church mobile app, and you'll find details about the jacket and coat drop-off locations. They're two convenient locations. You can easily just run in and drop off a box or jackets and coats by themselves. And we are just so grateful for you participating in this with us as we continue to live the expression of being for Dulles. All right, hey, our band's going to lead us here in worship, and then we're going to kick off this new series I'm really excited about. We're calling The Genius of Jesus, based on Erwin McManus' brand new book. All right, let's worship together. Okay, so in every part of our lives, every arena of life, from science to technology to the arts, we're captivated by stories of genius. And I want to test this. Right from the start of this series, I'm going to tell you a story that I think, just personally, I think this is an example of genius. And I want to see if it doesn't at least fascinate you or captivate you. So Amy, a few years ago, had to have a surgery. There was a suspicious cyst that needed to be biopsied. And we're meeting with the surgeon to do the pre-op, appointment with the doctor. And she tells us, we love this doctor, by the way. Amy had this doctor for many years before she retired. And she's super professional, really clear in how she explains everything. And what seemed at first to me like a minor detail, I realized, wow, this is kind of a big thing. She said, I want to explain to you that this surgery is going to be using the Da Vinci surgical system. And I was like, what is that? We've never heard of that before. And she said, well, Amy, you'll be in the operating room, obviously, along with the nurses and the robotic arms that essentially descend from the ceiling. And I will have my hands in very high-tech gloves performing the surgery while seated on the other side of a glass window in the next room. And I was trying to get my head around this. I said, wait, I'm not sure if I'm understanding you correctly. You'll be in another room. And she explained to me, yeah, I'll be doing the surgery. I'll be controlling all the surgical instruments, but through a set of gloves, sitting about 10 feet away from the operating table. And I just became like I am in a lot of these kinds of things, a big nerd. I started asking a lot of questions like, wait, this is blowing my mind. And Amy elbows me and says, hey, remember, the big concern here is me having a biopsy then. And I said, yeah, babe, yeah, you're obviously my priority, but this is super cool. And I kept asking questions. And the surgeon, the doctor, explained to us that this idea originated with the military, where our military wanted our military surgeons to be able to operate here in the United States on U.S. soldiers on the battlefield, even in other countries. And I'm trying to get my head around this, and that's one of the unique aspects of what really defines genius, which I'll get more to here in just a moment. So I ended up studying this, and by the way, Amy's biopsy came back benign. We were super grateful for that, obviously. And as I researched this more, I learned that a company called Intuitive created the Da Vinci surgical system so that telesurgery or long-distance surgery could be possible. And it's so prevalent now, it's happening right here in Northern Virginia. And Amy was a patient who had a surgical procedure done through this Da Vinci system. But I learned that it actually didn't originate with the military. The original idea started with NASA. NASA was trying to figure out, how do we perform emergency surgeries on astronauts or people living for long periods of time in space or on the ISS when no surgeon is available. This fascinated me, but it did more than just fascinate me. It had a greater effect on me than just captivating my interest, and it should have the same effect on you. So let's talk about what genius is. Now, geniuses violate the status quo. They disrupt the normal way of thinking. They actually change the way we think historically about the world in terms of what should be expected. Geniuses change the expected view of the future to where we see the future differently. Here's the mistake that I think many people make about genius. I think many of us look at somebody with a super high IQ, super smart, or some great idea that makes them a lot of money, and we see a talent that separates the genius from the rest of us, rather than seeing the genius as someone who's opened a door or made something possible for the rest of us. And that really gets into the proper definition of what genius is. Genius is that rare expression of human capacity that changes the way we think about the world, how we view our own limitations or capabilities, and ultimately changes what we believe is possible. That's the true nature of genius. Genius isn't just someone who is super intellectual or comes up with a great concept on their own and it garners them a lot of attention or fame. Genius, actually, properly viewed, is someone who has such a remarkably different view of the world or of the future that their idea affects the people around them, so much so that it changes the way the people around them see themselves, see others, and see the future. Now, Erwin, in his book here, makes this really important point that the word genius is rooted in the concept of creativity or creative. Genius is actually shares the same root word as generative. To generate something essentially out of nothing, what seems like out of nothingness, comes this remarkable idea or this new invention or technology or this new higher level way of achieving. Now, obviously, the world has accepted certain personalities as genius, like Beethoven or Galileo, Einstein. I think some recent, even though this crosses into the world of business and entrepreneurship and small business and then super big mega business, of course, I think a lot of the world would put Bill Gates or Steve Jobs in the arena, the category of genius. Absolutely Michael Jordan. When we define genius properly, which Erwin does so well in the beginning of his book, Michael Jordan would certainly make the list. I want to give you another example here of just a recent conversation that happened about 2 or 3 days ago. So my family just went to Disney World. Fall is the busiest time for our family. Amy starting the preschool up in the fall and the film festival and so many initiatives that happen in and around the church. And so we've been in this habit of right after the film festival getting away at least for a long weekend. We went to Disney World and went to Star Wars Land. Star Wars Land is the newest attraction at Disney World. It's the largest land Disney's ever built in any of their parks worldwide. And it kind of has the same effect, particularly on nerds, certainly on Star Wars fans, of course, where it just leaves you kind of in awe. And when you turn the corner, this land is so detail-oriented. It's like walking in a Star Wars scene, or certainly on a Star Wars set, movie set, is what it seems like. Every detail is just thought through so well. Chewbacca's over here working on a ship that has smoke coming out of the engine, and he's frustrated because he can't get it to work. It's like you're watching a scene in a movie right in front of you. And then you turn the corner at one point, and there sits the Millennium Falcon. Built to scale, it's enormous. It's bigger than what you're imagining before you walk into the land. And you can walk around the Millennium Falcon, sort of underneath of it, get in a queue line for the ride Smuggler's Run, and then when it's your turn, you walk inside the Millennium Falcon. It's super uber cool to be inside, where all these major scenes happened in Star Wars. And then when you're called into with 5 other people the cockpit. There's 6 seats in the Millennium Falcon. There's 2 pilots, 2 gunners, and 2 engineers. And Reagan had never done this ride before, so she was selected as a pilot. And this ride it's cool when you're a gunner or an engineer, but it's really great when you're a pilot. And so Reagan got to fly the Millennium Falcon. And when she would push forward on the thrust, the whole cockpit, the whole ship would, go down forward. When she'd pull back, we would fly up in the air. When she hit the hyperdrive, we went in, to hyper mode. It's just super crazy realistic. And to hear Reagan's reaction was really, really great. Now, in the airport in Orlando, to come home, we ran into our friends that live not far from us in South Riding and actually attend here at Dulles. Jim Chapman said to me, "Brad, we went to Universal, but we took one day to go check out Star Wars lands. Oh my gosh, Brad, have you been?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "It blew my mind." And he started using language. He didn't use the word genius, but he started using language that essentially defines genius. He said, this is like a game changer. Like, it's remarkable. And he went into the detail. And we didn't even talk about Smuggler's Run, which is considered the bad ride in this land. Rise of the Resistance is the super great ride, like one of Disney's best rides ever in Star Wars land. And so we're talking about just how you come out just scratching your head trying to figure out, what did I just experience? This is really pretty remarkable. Disney has elevated the imaginative experience. All right, all of this to say that these pictures and words in airports trying to describe what this was like took me all the way back to Walt Disney. Walt Disney wasn't envisioning specifically a Star Wars land. Star Wars didn't even exist when Walt died. But you wonder if Star Wars, if George Lucas would have even ever made the movie if it hadn't been for Walt Disney. And for Walt Disney to not just create ideas on screens that kind of take you out of reality for a moment and allow you to imagine a world that you've never thought of, but he created lands, spaces to walk through where you would experience ideas and put your hands on experiential devices that would stretch the imagination. Here's another example, a quick example from the film festival a couple weeks ago. I had the privilege of interviewing the director of our short film, Feeling Through. And I didn't know this until the interview, but in Feeling Through, I'm watching this film and I'm watching the actor who's playing a deaf and blind man. And it was so realistic to me. And I'm captivated in this 15, 16-minute short film. Wow, is it possible that this actor is deaf and blind? Because he's portraying this, what looks so real to me, as a deaf and blind character trying to find his way home in an urban city late at night, get his way to the bus station. And I just talked myself out of it. No, there's no way a deaf and blind man could actually receive direction on set, could rehearse, I just couldn't conceive of the idea. And in the interview with the director, he told me, yeah, the actor is actually deaf and blind. In fact, he's the first actor a male actor to ever perform in a movie. And I said, wait, do you mean in a short film? And he said, no. Based on all of our research, we don't believe there's ever been a deaf and blind actor to play a part in a movie, certainly not in a leading role. And the film went on this past winter and spring to get Oscar nominated. It just stretched my mind into a new way of thinking of what is possible. That is a definition of genius. Genius isn't a person that you observe who's super smart and does something great for their own lives. Genius is somebody who elevates all of us or stretches all of us or changes the way all of us view the world or view what's possible or think, imagine what could be. Now, while Jesus was clearly brilliant, just brilliance alone is not necessarily what defines a genius. Jesus was brilliant, obviously, but the collective world would agree, whether believing in him as God or divine or not, the vast majority of the world agrees that Jesus is one of the most influential figures who's ever walked the earth. What has never been done, I don't believe, until Erwin's book, The Genius of Jesus, is I don't believe anyone has ever looked at specifically the genius, based on definition, the genius of Jesus. And the impact that his genius has had on the planet, on civilization. Erwin just breaks this down so much. I'm highly, strongly encouraging you to get this book, read it. It's in audio form also. I'm going through it for parts of it my third time now. And in the book, Erwin examines Jesus not just from the standpoint of his divinity, but actually looks at how Jesus changes what it means to be human. He changes the idea of what it means to be human and our brokenness and our struggles and distrusting other people. Jesus turns humanity, the concept of humanity, completely upside down and opens up all kinds of possibilities into who you and I and everyone could become. Now, Erwin in chapter 1 gets into some personal story of how he grew up. He and his brother and mom went through a broken family early in Erwin's life when his parents divorced. His mom led them into Roman Catholicism, and then they went into a time where they were Buddhist, and then experimented with a progressive Judaism. And Erwin was talking about how they just were always trying to find meaning for their lives and find some significance in why they're here. And Erwin specifically was trying to always land on a place of why? Why do I exist? What's the purpose of my life? And I want to read here just a page or two from Erwin's own story. While God was genuinely caring, this progressive rabbi had taught Erwin's mom, his name was Kushner, had taught that while God was genuinely caring, God was unfortunately powerless to help us in our time of need. This pretty much matched my experience, Erwin says. If God was out there, he just wasn't very helpful. It seems strange to say, but there was solace in believing God had good intentions toward us, even if they were poorly executed. My mom was drawn to Kushner's progressive expression of Judaism because it explained God's absence in her pain while allowing her to still believe in his goodness. It felt good to know that God was not indifferent to us, just overwhelmed. Still, if this life was more than God could handle, you have to begin to wonder, how in the world are we supposed to survive it? Looking back, our journey of faith felt much like a man wandering across a desert, moving from water hole to water hole. When we found a new teacher or worldview, our thirst was quenched for a moment. But very quickly, we found ourselves parched and desperate again. My mom's spiritual journey during most of my formative years made a huge impact on me. And he goes into explaining a lot about his mom here and how open she was to being wrong. And she would consider different ways of looking at life when she considered one faith incomplete or inaccurate. Erwin goes on to say, this is parents, really, every one of us should really hear this. This is so profound. How we are loved as children influences our capacity to believe in God in our adulthood. If we are raised to be open-minded, curious, and inquisitive, we will have less fear and be less resistant to mystery, uncertainty, and the transcendent. But when our experiences as children convince us that people cannot be trusted, we should not be surprised to find ourselves resistant to ever trusting a God we cannot see and do not know. If we find ourselves the victims of deep pain, disappointment, and disillusionment when we are young, these two become significant contributors to our spiritual development. This would definitely describe my childhood, Erwin says. For the sake of others whom I love, I will not go into details here. It is enough to say that many of us walk with a limp from wounds we received when we could barely stand on our own. Erwin goes on to say that in college, he began studying Socrates, which led him into what has become a lifelong study of geniuses. And so through much of his college career, he was researching and reading and just consuming so much information about geniuses. And in that process, he found himself craving, wanting to know how he could become a better human. He was recognizing just inadequacies in his own life, disappointments in other people and in himself. There was a depression and anxiety season in Erwin's childhood that he couldn't explain, that he was trying to explain. And all of this put him in his study of geniuses on a collision course with the figure of Jesus. Now, this is what's remarkable that Erwin draws out so well here about genius. I can't stress this enough and the impact that it made on me in reading this book. A rule of genius is that the particular discipline of the super smart person or the person with the remarkable concept or invention or new way of looking at the future, that discipline, whether it's chemistry or mathematics or something in science and technology, that discipline can't be transferred to anyone else. Jesus completely reverses this with his own genius. The genius of Jesus, as it turns out, is actually contagious. Simply by sitting with Mozart or knowing Mozart or Picasso or Michael Jordan cannot turn anyone, regardless of how long you know them or how long you sit with them, can't possibly turn someone into a great musician or painter or basketball player. Genius, the discipline of someone's genius can't be transferred to someone else. And yet the genius of Jesus is absolutely transferable. I want to read another section here that really speaks to this, where Erwin is getting to the point that Jesus is actually teaching us. Jesus' genius is living the human expression purely and completely and wholly. When a lot of us end up with the expression, you're only human, I'm only human, Jesus actually completes the human experience and then offers it to you and me. It seems serendipitous that the concept of genius was being invented around the same time that Jesus of Nazareth walked the earth. If the Greeks and Romans were correct in viewing genius as the expression of divine consuming the human, then Jesus would be the greatest expression of that phenomenon humanity has ever witnessed. A human living in the fullness of the divine. A human being who is both fully present and fully transcendent. Einstein saw a new way to do math. Fisher saw a new way to play chess. Jesus saw a new way to be human. A way to live each moment fully present and fully alive. Imagine if your every choice and every action only and always created the good and the beautiful and the true. The genius of Jesus is that he teaches us how to become human again. And yet, I have never seen a list of history's greatest geniuses that has included the person of Jesus. This is really a remarkable point. And Erwin has studied since college geniuses. He's now in his 60s. For 40 years or more, he's been looking at this. He's never seen Jesus of Nazareth included on anybody's genius list. How is it possible that Jesus, who singularly changed the course of modern history, would not merit being mentioned among the great minds of the human story? How has the genius of Jesus been so strangely overlooked? I imagine that this is likely because we feel we must either embrace Jesus as divine or discount him completely. Yet the opposite should be most true. If you do not accept him as divine, then it would seem impossible to deny his genius. How else can you explain that one singular person has so dramatically impacted humanity? Of course, if Jesus is who he claimed to be, if Jesus is God, then his impact on humanity would be completely expected. My decision, Erwin says, over 40 years ago to surrender myself to the person of Jesus has forever changed the direction of my life. Jesus has singularly impacted my values, my mindset, the choices that I've made. The outcome of that change is maybe a better husband, a better father, and without question, a better person. Though I am deeply flawed, I cannot deny the tangible changes in my life as a result of my relationship with Jesus. Simply put, Jesus has made me a better human. Or maybe Jesus made me human again. I've just been reading here the last month, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. I'm going through the New Testament here as we approach Christmas. It's so hard to believe that we're saying that we're almost to the holiday season. I've just finished Matthew, Mark, and Luke. It's fascinating to me when you read the Gospels as a collective altogether, you really see Peter as this kind of outlandish figure. It's just almost unthinkable that Jesus chose him as one of his disciples, and yet he chose 12 followers that were so imperfect. Peter was somewhere between maybe arrogant or at least prideful. He was argumentative. He would interrupt people. He had this sense or tone of having to be right. He even argues with Jesus at one point when he says, Jesus, I'm so fascinated by you and I'm so committed to you. I'll follow you anywhere. I'll go anywhere. I'll pay any cost to stay with you and to follow you. And Jesus says, oh, is that right? Well, actually, the day is coming where you'll actually deny me. You'll deny knowing me. And Peter says, never. Jesus, never. He's arguing with Jesus. I'll never deny you. And then, of course, the night Jesus was arrested and the crucifixion began, Peter was so embarrassed and so fearful of being associated with Jesus, he denied knowing him 3 times that night alone. And it's amazing to see how after Jesus' resurrection, in his grace and his love, and in Jesus' vision of who Peter will become, who he's going to turn Peter into, who he's turning him into, Jesus, with so much compassion and love, says 3 times to Peter, which isn't an accident, by the way. 3 times he tells Peter, you're going to feed my sheep. You, this outlandish figure, this temperament of interrupting people and speaking up and with loud opinions, being so argumentative, even having kind of violent outbursts at times, you are going to pastor my sheep. You're going to feed my sheep. You're going to care for my sheep. And you watch this transformation happen in this man's life, and you see yourself in Peter. And then you go back to when Jesus first calls Peter, the fisherman. Peter was just a fisherman, a dirty, probably smelly fisherman in those days, smelled a lot, just low on the totem pole in terms of society. Jesus calls Peter and says, I'm going to teach you how to fish for people. And you watch this transformation, and when you read the gospel stories, you start to see yourself in all of these imperfect people with their brokenness and flaws and regrets, and who Jesus turns them into. This is the genius of Jesus, that he came perfectly, fully present, fully alive, not just as God, but also as a human, the flawless human, to inject in us, to embed in us the replacement for our brokenness, for our defensiveness, our short fuses, our disappointments, our depression, our anxieties that seem to take over our minds, how we become people of worry or fear instead of dreamers and seeing ourselves influencing the lives of others. I'm going to read the last couple pages here of chapter 1 as we wrap up this first part of the Genius of Jesus series. And just wherever you are, if you're in your kitchen, if you're maybe making breakfast while you're watching, or you're working on something, just if you'll just tune into these last couple pages here and really give God your full attention. Erwin says, I'm convinced that my life is the outcome of the genius of Jesus, and that the genius of Jesus has as much to do with who he is as it does with who he makes you to become. Jesus, as we will discover, Erwin says, carries all the attributes of a genius. He saw the world as no one had ever seen it. He saw human potential where it was imperceivable to others. He elevated the entire definition of what it means to be human. But his real genius was in making genius transferable. Jesus awakens the genius in everyone and anyone who would trust in his guidance and walk in his steps. If you let Jesus change your mind, he will awaken the genius within you. He will not make you great at physics or music. He will give you new eyes to see the beauty and wonder all around you. He will make you a conduit for the good and the beautiful and the true. He will awaken within you all you need to be fully alive. What if we were all caterpillars waiting to become butterflies? What if the genius of Jesus is that he knows how to unlock the genius in all of us? It is one thing when genius gives us new music, a new art form or technology, or a great advancement in science or medicine. But while genius can give us a better world to live in, it almost never makes us better, kinder, or more compassionate, more honorable, more courageous, more humane. I think the phrase we often use as an excuse for our worst behavior is, well, I'm only human. Our history as a species is riddled with love and hate, with compassion and violence, with betrayal and loyalty, with bitterness and forgiveness. All these are equally the human story. The tragedy is that somewhere along the line, the worst expressions of our nature become the norm, and the best of us become lost in ideals. Religion told us that we were all sinners, and penance was our only hope. It mitigated our guilt and shame, but offered no means to restore our humanity. Jesus changed that narrative. He revealed to us what it looks like to live fully human through his own life. He then called us to reclaim our original intention to reflect the image of God in our humanity. Jesus applied his genius to the most profound human dilemmas. Are we as a species actually the worst expressions of ourselves, motivated by ideals that are beyond our reach? Or are we most human when we are pursuing those ideals, even though we continue to live beneath them? In all his actions, from confronting the use of God's name and the power of organized religion as a means to manipulate and oppress the poor or powerless, to the elegance of summarizing over 613 religious laws in the Old Testament into one commandment, which is to establish love as the guiding principle of the universe, to reframing the power of servanthood, Jesus redefined the core of the human problem as the condition of the human heart. All the problems of the world hinge on this one truth. We have seen the enemy, and he is us. Yet Jesus showed us in himself who we were always meant to be. His life and teachings force us to confront both the worst and the best within the human spirit, while offering us a way into a new humanity. If Picasso offered to serve as your mentor with the promise that one day you could paint like him, would you do it, even if it took a lifetime? If Bobby Fischer offered to take you under his wing to transform you into the greatest chess player in the world, but told you it would take you the rest of your life, the full span of your life, would you accept? If Mozart convinced you that if you gave him the next 40 years, you could hear the sounds only he hears in his imagination and then be able to translate them into music, would it be worth your life? In Jesus, we have been given this exact kind of invitation. The genius of Jesus is completely transferable. His genius can become yours. My hope is that as we unwrap the person of Jesus, we will find in him the most astonishing and transformative way to truly live. And so I want to wrap up here just with three practical suggestions. One is, will you accept Jesus' invitation? This may be the moment or the day where you are ready. You've read enough, you've listened enough, you've looked at other belief systems, you've dabbled in religion, and you've come to the point of believing that Jesus offers humanity something that no one else, no other technology, no company, no other way of thinking offers. And that the genius of Jesus, which was to be fully human and fully alive and fully the character of God, is offered to you. This may be the day. And I want to say, why would you delay? Why would you put this off? Why would you give it another week to think on? Would you accept this invitation today? And it's just super simple. You just say something along the lines of, Jesus, I give you my life. Whenever someone asks me to pray with them, to begin a relationship with God, like, Brad, I'm ready. I want to start this. I really just lead them in that kind of a prayer. Just say to God, Jesus, I give you my life. I give you control of every part of my life. Begin leading me. Begin changing me from the inside out. The other two practical suggestions here is that you would commit to this series with us through November here. Next week, we're going to talk about the empathy, the genius of empathy. In week 3, we're going to talk about the genius of the good, both inspired by chapters in Erwin's book here. And that will lead us up to, believe it or not, the Christmas series, where we look at the genius of the particular circumstances and how Jesus came into this world. The genius of how Jesus was born. And The other suggestion here is that you read the story of Jesus. I would point you to Luke. John is a great place to start. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Invest in the story of Jesus. I love you, Dulles family, and I want to wrap up here by praying with you. God, I pray that wherever we are on the belief spectrum, whether we have been following you and your son Jesus for many, many years, or whether this is new to us, or we're considering faith again after some hurt or after walking away, maybe from the church, I ask, God, that you make real in us what you came to show us in your son. Jesus, when you came here, you came to show us the nature of God, the character of God, the love of God, but you also came to show us what being human should be, what humanity should look like. So we ask you to work your humanity into us, work your character, your divine character and good and love into us, and make us more human. Make us human again. God, I thank you for this church, for this family of people, this family of faith. And I ask you to guide us and protect us as we continue to live our lives more and more on the trajectory of following you, Jesus. Amen. I love you guys. Don't forget about the coat drive, the 2 drop-off locations that can be found on our Dulles mobile app. And we'll pick up with part 2 next week. I love you guys a lot.